this 12-day period is nothing short of extraordinary. I want you to slight pause between movements 2 and 3, and sadly, ladies and gentlemen, that will be it for a pause. There will be no intermission. Technically, this piece is supposed to be played with no intermission. I'll just give a very brief sort of explanation of this piece and what it entails. This piece was written by Gustav Mahler in the years 1901 and 1902. In 2 summers, he had a summer house in southern Austria in a place called Carinthia, which is very near the Italian border. This was the summer after his marriage to Alma. So he was married, they were pregnant, they had a child on the way. And what's interesting about this is a piece of music that was written in the prime of his life, the happiest, ironically, 2 years of his life, because starting in the year 1903, everything went south on many different levels. But in 1901, he wrote this piece in his summer cottage. It's a 5-movement work divided into 2 parts. The first part, which involves the first and second movements. The second part, which is 1 movement, which is a scherzo. And a lot of this is in your program, you'll see. And the last part, which is the 4th movement, which is called adagietto, which is a small adagio, and the last movement, which is called a rondo finale. So there are 3 parts and divided into their 5 movements. It is a piece that is based on, it starts, the first movement is a funeral march, and you'll hear the very funeral-like motive, the rhythm that goes throughout the movement. The first movement is really the introduction to the piece. The second movement is sort of, if you can get your minds around it, the first movement. It's a traditional sonata form. But what is interesting about this movement is it uses the thematic material of the funeral march at the beginning and inserts it in the development section of this traditional sonata form. In the first movement, Mahler quotes from his own music, specifically pieces called the Kindertotenlieder, the songs on the death of children, which he wrote at contiguous the same time as this piece. So he was very happy, quote unquote, but he was writing music about children dying, and a year later he had a child who then 4 years later died. And he was diagnosed in 1902, 1903 with a heart condition that eventually killed him in 1911. Okay, I'll go back. The first movement is this traditional sonata form, which includes material from the introduction, from the funeral march. This funeral march infuses the entire piece. So it's a happy piece, but it's not really, as you will know with Mahler, it's not really happy. It's in between. The third movement is a traditional scherzo, which includes 2 different dance forms, very Austrian dance forms. The first is a very plodding, peasanty, heavy movement called a Ländler. That's the beginning of the piece. And the second half of the piece, the second part of this movement, is a waltz, a real Viennese waltz. He contrasts these 2 dances in this very typical scherzo. And it features an extraordinarily great artist, our principal horn player, Lisa Nettleship, who you will hear in a matter of minutes blow the roof off of this place. So, and she's sitting here. From that very joyous, which is really the most joyous piece in the symphony, we get to the last part of this symphony, the third part. The third part is this famous Adagietto. This is a piece he wrote, we now know, and it's written by Mahler in a letter. He wrote this for his wife, for Alma. It's a love letter, a love piece, a very, very wrenchingly gorgeous piece of music. All of you will know it because it's one of the most famous pieces and most played pieces of Mahler's. And if you are a fan, and I wrote in the program notes, if you're a fan of a very great movie called Death in Venice, the Thomas Mann movie Death in Venice, by a great Italian director named Visconti, you'll know this because this music is played over and over again in this film. But it's a heart-wrenching, gorgeous piece of music, and I don't want to say much more about it except that it uses material from Tristan. There's an actual quote from the second act of Tristan throughout the piece. Again, the love motive from Tristan. So he's using all the information, all the music that both he conducted in Vienna that he knew subconsciously even before he became a conductor, and he quotes another very famous songs on the death of children, the Kindertotenlieder, called Ich bin der Welt abhandengekommen. It comes at the most climactic part of this piece, and translated into English, I give up all attachment to the world. Another Mahler searching for ultimate salvation, death, transfiguration, all of it. So that's this movement, which if you don't cry, I won't hold it against you, but you might, and that's good, because you'll be getting the point of this piece. It's the most beautiful, emotional piece of music, I think, ever written. Last movement, to get us away from all this heavy, very serious, sad feeling, is probably the happiest movement other than the scherzo. It's a rondo. So the theme of this rondo is taken from a very famous Wunderhorn song he wrote called Lob des hohen Verstands, which translated means praise of enlightened ideas or high ideas. Well, the irony is in this song, it's a song between a donkey and I think a hen. And each is talking about how more intelligent they are. And of course, at the end of this very stupid song, the donkey wins. And there's a motive in it that you'll hear throughout this last movement, this hee-haw sound, which you hear throughout the entire piece, which is Mahler quoting from this. But the beginning of the piece, it's played by the bassoon, and it is the actual theme in the original key of this Wunderhorn song, again written contemporaneous with the symphony. That last movement is a purely joyous affirmation of life with basically the ending being this great choral apotheosis with full brass section. I did not say that in the second movement, otherwise known as the first movement, it ends with this great choral motive. And of course, at the end of the piece, Mahler brings this motive, this gigantic Wagnerian Bruckner sound with full brass back at the end of the piece. So the whole piece is sort of cyclic. It goes from the first part to this, which is this sort of sad funeral march aspect, to the scherzo, which is sort of the sort of peasanty happy moment, to this very, very profoundly emotional adagietto, to this final conclusion, which is very up and sort of jocoso, happy, joyous, with this great choral finale. This is a piece I've conducted before. It happens to be, and I've said this in the program note, probably one of my favorite pieces of music ever written. It's the first piece of music I ever heard live in a concert hall, and I was about 7 or 6, and it was Leonard Bernstein with the New York Philharmonic at the old Philharmonic Hall. So I'm dating myself quite a bit. But it convinced me, or it brought me to the point where I thought, someday I really want to do this. Never did I ever think I would actually do this piece, interpret this piece. And I want to say it's a dream of mine. It has happened. And the dream has happened thanks to the board, the people of this community of Plainfield, and most importantly, what you're going to hear from this extraordinary orchestra. This orchestra has done unbelievable work, and I'm so proud of them on so many levels. This is a crowning achievement for me of my work here, and they're responsible. Every single great artist, every musician you're going to hear now.